Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when love does something outrageous. Moments when connection defies logic and loyalty rewrites the rules. Today, I want to tell you a story, not of a hero in uniform, nor a scientist in a lab, but of a puppy, a German shepherd. Small, still clumsy, but with a heart as big as the world. He was only a few months old, still learning to climb stairs, still chasing butterflies, still figuring out what sit really means. But when his boy, the little human who fed him, cuddled him, and called him Buddy, was taken to the hospital, something in that puppy changed. They say he found his boy's favorite sock near the door. Just a sock, nothing more. But to him, it was everything. It smelled like home, like comfort. So he waited, sock in his mouth, day after day. People came and went. They tried to distract him, coax him away with toys, with treats, with walks. But he just waited, silent, focused, unshakable, until one night, quiet, moonlit, almost magical, he slipped out. Somehow, someway, this little German shepherd found a way to follow the scent of his boy. Through neighborhoods, across streets, past locked doors and cold hallways, until he reached the hospital. And when they found him, he was curled up beside the hospital bed, sock still in his mouth, tail wagging gently as his boy opened his eyes for the first time in days. Now, was it coincidence? Was it instinct? Or was it something deeper? I believe it was love. Pure, fearless, unrelenting love. Because real love doesn't sit still. It doesn't wait for permission. It crosses boundaries. It climbs fences. It finds hospital windows cracked open just enough for a miracle to sneak through. And isn't that what we all need sometimes? A reminder that someone, somewhere, is holding our metaphorical sock. That even when we feel alone, someone is waiting. That healing is not just about medicine or machines, but about feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling loved. That puppy didn't have training. He didn't have a map. He didn't need permission. He just had a mission, to be with his boy. And that mission gave him the courage to do the impossible. Loyalty is one of those rare forces in the universe that doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be announced, validated, or put on display. It just exists, quietly, powerfully, and often the moment it's tested. The German shepherd puppy didn't bark. He didn't whine. He didn't tear through the house in protest when his boy was taken away. No tantrums, no drama, just silence and presence. He simply found the sock. That single, worn out, half-chewed, fabric memory of the boy he loved. And he waited. Day turned to night. Night turned to another day. Seasons didn't change, but something inside that little dog did. He wasn't just a puppy anymore. He had a purpose now, a duty. Because loyalty is not loud, it's still. It sits in the hallway. It waits by the door. It listens for footsteps that never come. It lies down beside a sock and guards it like treasure, not because it's told to, but because its heart says, stay, because something deep inside whispers, he needs you. And that's the thing about real loyalty. It doesn't clock out when things get hard. It doesn't vanish when the atmosphere shifts. It doesn't vanish when the room gets quiet or when hope gets thin. It doubles down. It anchors itself. It waits, silently. Too often in this world, we confuse noise with devotion. We think love has to be spoken to be real. We believe support has to be visible, posted, announced. But there is a deeper kind of love, a more sacred loyalty, that doesn't need to be seen or heard to exist. It simply remains. Think of the people in your life who were just there when you were falling apart. Think of the ones who didn't lecture you, didn't try to fix you, didn't run when the lights dimmed. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. They were just there, like the puppy, waiting by the door, not for himself, not for treats or toys or walks, but for the only thing that mattered, his boy. Loyalty like that doesn't calculate risk. It doesn't wonder if it's being noticed. It doesn't care if there's a payoff. It shows up. It stays. It endures. You see, true loyalty isn't proven by grand gestures. It's proven by stillness. It's proven in the moment when everyone else gives up and walks away, and one soul remains silently holding a place for you. Whether that's in the form of a friend, a partner, a parent, or even a puppy with a sock in his mouth. That kind of loyalty is love without ego. It is presence without pride. And it is power without noise. In a world full of noise and distractions, the most extraordinary love story that day wasn't shouted from rooftops or broadcast to the world. It was whispered in the silent bond between a small German shepherd and his missing boy. So the next time someone is quiet but present, not loud but loyal, not flashy but faithful, recognize the sacredness of that silence. Because in that silence there is strength. In that waiting, there is love. And in that unwavering presence, there is a reminder real loyalty doesn't leave. It just waits until the one it loves finds their way back home. Love has a language all its own, and most times it's not spoken. It's not wrapped in grand declarations or shiny ribbons. It doesn't always come with perfect timing or poetic words. Sometimes love is a sock, forgotten, crumpled, covered in teeth marks, but sacred. You see, for that little German shepherd puppy, the sock was more than just fabric. It was more than cotton and scent. It was a memory. It was him, his boy. The one who used to chase him around the living room, who laughed when Cluppy clumsily skidded across the floor, who fell asleep beside him every night and whispered, "You're my best friend." When his boy disappeared, when the house grew quiet and heavy, Lud had to anchor itself to something, and it found the sock. That single, ordinary item became something extraordinary. It became a symbol, a placeholder for a presence that was missing. The sock carried the weight of every memory, every laugh, every warm cuddle on a cold morning. The puppy couldn't explain it, but he knew it, he could feel it. Love always leaves a trail. Not always where we expect, but it's there, in forgotten objects, in the smell of a familiar shirt, in the last place someone sat, in the notes they wrote, the gifts they gave, the spaces they touched. Sometimes love looks like a text message you can't delete. Sometimes it's a mug in the kitchen cabinet you never use but refuse to throw away. Sometimes it's a sock in a puppy's mouth, held with such reverence you'd think it was a crown. It's easy to overlook love when it doesn't shout. It's easy to miss its clues when we're rushing through life. But love is always leaving signs. It's always marking places. It's always saying, "I was here." Even in its absence, it is present. For that little dog, the sock wasn't a toy, it was a lifeline. It was proof that his boy existed, that the bond they shared was real, that love was not gone, just somewhere else. So he held on to it, not because he understood hospitals or illness, but because love doesn't require full understanding to act. It just needs heart. And that heart, small and furry and loyal beyond comprehension, knew that the sock was the closest thing to his boy he had left. So he guarded it, slept beside it, carried it from room to room like it was a piece of his soul. And in doing so, the puppy taught us something profound. Love doesn't always show up the way we expect. It's not always neat or tidy. It doesn't always arrive wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it limps in, ragged and silent, holding a chewed-up sock between its teeth. But the message is the same. I miss you. I remember you. I love you. And in those quiet reminders, in the things love leaves behind, we find our strength to keep going. To believe that connection is not bound by distance. That hearts know how to speak even when mouths cannot. That sometimes the tiniest things, the most overlooked things, carry the deepest meanings. So let us not dismiss the sock. Let us not overlook the ordinary. Because inside the ordinary, love is hiding, whispering, waiting to be found. There are rules in this world, invisible lines, fences, doors, procedures, signs that say no entry, regulations that remind us to stay in our lane, to follow the system, to wait our turn, to obey what's been laid out by logic. But when the heart takes the lead, when love overrides fear and instinct overtakes protocol, something incredible happens. Boundaries break. And that's exactly what happened with the German shepherd puppy. He was never trained to navigate cities. He didn't know the layout of hospitals. He didn't have a map or a plan or even a leash to guide him. But what he did have was love. And when the heart leads, it doesn't ask for directions. That puppy didn't sneak out because he was trying to disobey. He didn't cross streets and follow scents out of rebellion. He wasn't being mischievous. He was being brave, because something deeper called him, a pull that no barrier could contain. He felt his boy's absence, and he refused to be separated by a door or a rule or even a locked hospital gate. You see, when the heart is in command, the body follows. When love is the compass, it will point north, no matter how far, no matter how hard. Logic may say, stay put, but love says, and so we go. That's how people run into burning buildings to save strangers. That's how mothers lift cars to save their children. That's how a small puppy, no taller than a couch cushion, finds a way past fences, across sidewalks, through the sterile maze of a hospital, and into the room where his boy lies sleeping. Because love doesn't wait for permission when someone we care about is hurting. It moves. It climbs. It breaks through. And it doesn't care about what's allowed. It only cares about what's right. So many of us are taught to play it safe, to follow the rules, to not make noise, to not be too much, to suppress the urges of our heart because society says that's not how we do things. But the truth is, some of the most powerful moments in life are born from disobedience in the name of love. A father who drives through the night to see his daughter. A friend who barges in when you say you're fine, but they know better. A child who crawls into your lap after an argument because they just want to be close. A puppy who carries a sock and crosses every invisible line just to be near the one who gave him purpose. That's what happens when the heart leads. Walls don't stand a chance. Distance dissolves. Fear evaporates because the soul knows the way, and it doesn't need approval. It doesn't wait for conditions to be ideal. It doesn't care about appropriate or timely. It just moves with fierce urgency, with raw instinct, with a love that says, "You're not alone. I'm coming." That's not recklessness. That's courage. And that little German shepherd was not acting out of impulse. He was following the most ancient compass known to any living being, the call in the heart. He may not have known how. He may not have even known where. But he knew why. And sometimes, why is enough to tear down any wall that stands in the way. That is what makes love miraculous. That is what makes loyalty sacred. And that is why when the heart leads, boundaries, no matter how strong, how firm, how institutional, don't stand a chance. There's something ancient, almost mystical, about the way animals understand us, not with words, not with diagnoses, not with charts or explanations, but with something far more primal, far more honest, far more immediate. They feel us. They feel the shift in our energy before we speak. They sense the tremble in our voice even when we smile. They recognize sadness, not through tears, but through silence. They pick up on pain, not because we told them, but because we couldn't hide it. And that German shepherd puppy, he felt it. He didn't understand the machinery in the hospital. He couldn't comprehend medical charts or the sterile language of sickness. But he knew that something was wrong. His boy was gone, and the air didn't smell like playtime. It smelled like loss, like absence, like something had gone missing from his world. He couldn't explain it, but he could feel it settle over the house like a fog. Because animals don't get distracted by surface appearances the way we do. They don't get caught up in pretending everything's okay. They don't believe the fake smiles or rehearsed "I'm fines." They listen with their bodies. They observe with their hearts. They tune in. And while we numb ourselves with distractions, scrolling, talking, overworking, animals notice. They notice the change in our breathing. They notice when our footsteps become heavy. They notice when the laughter stops, when the routine breaks, when the light in our eyes dims just a little. They don't need evidence. They don't wait for confirmation. They don't require proof. They feel, and they respond. That's why the puppy didn't move from the sock, because to him that sock wasn't just a possession. It was an emotional relic, a clue, a leftover imprint of the boy he loved. And in his tiny chest something told him, stay close. Stay alert. Something is wrong. We often underestimate animals, relegating them to roles of pets, companions, background noise in our busy lives. But they're more than that. They are empaths. They are witnesses to our truest selves. They are quiet guardians of our souls. They know when we are not okay. And sometimes they are the only ones who do. Humans have learned to ignore their instincts, to suppress their gut feelings for the sake of logic or approval. But animals, they live by instinct. They trust the unspoken. They feel before they think. That's why, in moments of great pain or uncertainty, so many people find comfort in the company of their dog. Not because the dog has answers, but because the dog knows. And they stay, not asking for anything, not trying to fix it, just staying, just witnessing, just offering presence in a world that's forgotten how powerful presence really is. So while the rest of the world went on, trying to stay rational, trying to hope, trying to accept, That German shepherd puppy tuned into something deeper, something real, something we often miss: emotional truth. He didn't care about the hospital policies. He didn't care that it didn't make sense. He didn't care that he was just a small dog with no understanding of medicine or illness. He cared that his boy was gone. He felt that his boy needed him. And that was enough. Animals don't just react to what we do. They respond to who we are. They connect with our essence. Not our words, not our roles, not our masks. And in a world that often teaches us to ignore our inner signals, to deny our truth for the sake of keeping the peace, animals remind us what it looks like to live from the heart, to trust our instincts, to listen deeply, to show up, not because we were told to, but because something inside us knows. That puppy didn't need a reason. He had a feeling, and he followed it. Because sometimes the truest form of wisdom doesn't come from intellect. It comes from the quiet, primal, deeply attuned language of the soul. It's easy to believe that only the grand gestures matter. We live in a world obsessed with size, with scale, with spectacle. We think miracles have to be loud. We believe heroism must come with sirens or headlines or medals. We assume that if it doesn't go viral, if it doesn't shake the sky, it must not be real. But here's the truth. Sometimes it is the smallest, quietest act, the one no one sees, that shifts everything. Sometimes the thing that saves a life doesn't look like a superhero. It looks like a puppy carrying a sock. It wasn't much, not a cure, not a machine, not a miracle drug, just a sock, just a piece of fabric that still held the scent of the boy he loved. And the act of holding it, of guarding it, of carrying it across a world he didn't understand, that was enough to set a miracle in motion. That German shepherd puppy didn't think he was doing anything extraordinary. He wasn't trying to become a story. He wasn't performing for praise. He was just acting from love. He was following the deepest instinct a living creature can feel: go to the you love when they are in pain. And so he went. Guided by scent, driven by heart, compelled by something invisible but undeniable. No one told him what to do. No one trained him to track or navigate or sneak past locked doors. But he did it, not because he was extraordinary, but because he believed, on the deepest level, that love does not sit still when someone it cherishes is hurting. Let's pause and really think about that for a moment. That puppy didn't have strength or strategy or social power. He was just a baby. But what he did have was presence. And presence, when grounded in love, is the most powerful force on earth. You see, we often underestimate what the smallest acts can do. We think, what's the point of showing up when I can't fix it? What? Why bother calling when I don't have the right words? Wait, what's one gesture in the face of something so broken? But here's what that puppy reminds us. You don't have to fix the whole world. You just have to show up with your sock. It could be a literal sock, or a cup of tea, or a text message, or a 5-minute visit, or just sitting beside someone in silence. Because what matters is not the size of the act. What matters is what the act is rooted in. And when it's rooted in love, pure, unselfish, unconditional love, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a spark, a thread of connection, a signal to the one hurting: you're not alone. I came for you. I'm here. And sometimes that's all someone needs to come back. There are countless documented stories of people in comas, people fighting terminal illness, people on the edge, who suddenly take a turn for the better, not because of a new treatment, but because someone showed up. Because they heard a familiar voice. Because someone whispered, "Please come back to me." Because maybe a puppy curled up beside them and reminded their body what it meant to feel safe and warm and loved. You see, healing is not always physical. It's not always linear. Sometimes the body responds to the soul before it responds to science. That's what happened when that puppy found his boy. He didn't bring medicine. He didn't perform a miracle. He was the miracle. Just being there. Just existing beside his boy. Just wagging his tail gently and laying his head on the blanket. Just reminding the boy's spirit, "I've come to bring you back. You are missed. You are loved. You are not forgotten." We forget how powerful presence is. We think we have to do something spectacular. But in truth, our very presence, anchored in compassion, is the greatest medicine the world has ever known. It breaks down walls. It reignites hope. It reminds people who they are and that they matter, and that they are still part of this world. That puppy didn't be a genius. He just needed to love. And because he loved, his tiny act of carrying a sock, his quiet journey through unknown streets, his silent appearance in that sterile hospital room, moved the heart of a boy who forgot how to wake up. It mattered. More than all the machines, more than all the perfectly crafted speeches, more than all the checklists and protocols, it was real. It was raw. It was alive. So many of us wait to make a difference until we feel ready, until we have the right words, the right degree, the right confidence. But the puppy had none of that. He had no plan. He had no language. He had no perfect moment. He had only this, his memory, and his sock, and that was enough. How many of us are holding back love because we think we're not enough? How many times have we stopped ourselves from reaching out because we believed our small act couldn't possibly matter? How many people around us are silently suffering, waiting for someone, anyone, to show up with a small reminder that they're still seen? We wait to be significant. But what if the small things were the most significant of all? A gentle touch, a quiet message, a handmade note, a puppy at the foot of a bed, the things that save us. Not all at once, not with drama, but with presence, with heart, with truth. And those moments, those tiny, sacred, often overlooked moments, are when miracles are born. Let's not forget the sheer power of smallness. The mustard seed, the raindrop, the whisper, the heartbeat, the sock. We remember the puppy because he didn't do what was expected. He didn't need anyone to tell him his love was enough. He just acted on it. He didn't care if he looked silly. He didn't care if the odds were against him. He didn't need validation or applause. He just carried the sock and went after his boy. And that, friends, is the heart of every miracle, not power, not fame, not perfection. Just courage rooted in love. Just action born of loyalty. Just one being choosing not to give up, even when the world told him to stay behind. Sometimes that's all it takes. Not a mountain. Not a movement. Not a massive breakthrough. Just a small creature with a big heart, holding on to something that smells like home, and moving forward anyway. So the next time you think your gesture is too small, the next time you wonder if it even matters, the next time you hesitate to reach out because, what good will it do? Remember the puppy, remember the sock, and remember that sometimes the smallest acts create the greatest miracles. Darkness is a strange thing. It creeps in without knocking. Sometimes gradually, other times all at once. It doesn't always look like despair. Sometimes it looks like silence, a quiet that feels heavy, a stillness that seems permanent. When the boy was taken to the hospital, the light left the house. Not literally, there were still lamps, still sunlight pouring through the windows, still flickers on the television, but emotionally, the space dimmed. The laughter stopped echoing down the hall. The footsteps, the ones that had danced, stomped, and raced through the rooms, disappeared. The energy shifted. That absence, it's a type of darkness. A darkness that can't be fixed by turning on a switch. It's not the kind that settles in the corners of a room, but in the chambers of the heart. And in that void, in that hushed tension, a puppy waited. A puppy that didn't understand sickness. A puppy that couldn't articulate grief. A puppy that couldn't say, "Where is he?" But he could feel it. And he felt it deeply. He found the sock, and he clung to it like it was the last flicker of a candle he didn't want to see go out. That sock wasn't just cloth to him. It was warmth. It was scent. It was memory. It was hope. And so he laid with it, guarded it, carried it, until one day, compelled by something unseen, he left. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't wait for someone to open the door. He didn't calculate the odds. He simply followed the thread of love into the dark. This is what love does. It goes where it's needed, even if the road is unclear, even if the path is covered in shadows. And when he entered that hospital, when he curled up beside that bed, he did what no machine, no medication, no clinical process could do. He brought the light back. Because sometimes the light we need doesn't come from science. It doesn't come from certainty. It comes from connection. The boy may have been unconscious. He may not have opened his eyes. But something shifted in that room the moment that puppy arrived. There's a light that lives in love, especially love that is pure, instinctual, and free of conditions. And when it shows up in dark places, it doesn't need to shine brightly to be effective. It just needs to exist. Even the faintest flicker of light can push back against an entire room of darkness. That's what that puppy was. A flicker, a heartbeat, a breath of warmth in a cold, clinical place. And the thing about light, it finds its own way in. No matter how sealed the room may be, no matter how many walls stand in the way, no matter how locked up the heart may feel, love has a way of slipping through the cracks, of climbing over the barriers, of seeping through like dawn. And it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for invitation. It just moves, quietly, persistently, courageously, toward the one who needs it most. There are moments in life when the people we love enter dark seasons. Sometimes it's an illness. Sometimes it's depression. Sometimes it's heartbreak. Sometimes it's grief so profound it changes the texture of their days. And when that happens, the greatest thing we can do is what that puppy did. We don't need to arrive with answers. We don't need to cure or correct. We simply need to bring our light, even if it's just a small one, even if it feels insignificant, even if it's dim and trembling. Because in a world full of uncertainty and despair, even a single act of pure love can become the turning point. You never know when your presence becomes the moment someone begins to return to themselves. You never know when your arrival becomes the warmth that stirs a sleeping soul. You never know when your small gesture becomes the first breath of light in someone's darkness. That puppy had no way of knowing how powerful his journey would be. He didn't set out to be a hero. He wasn't trying to save anyone. But sometimes when we follow love instead of fear, we end up becoming the very miracle someone was waiting for. And that's what happened. That tiny, trembling creature, driven only by instinct and loyalty, crossed the threshold of darkness and brought the light in with him. We often think light has to arrive in strength, but light doesn't need volume. It needs presence, that's all. It needs to show up. It needs to exist in the space where someone thought nothing good could return. It needs to curl up beside a weary heart and whisper, without words, "I see you. I'm here. You're not alone." That's what real healing begins with, not formulas, not speeches, not guarantees, but with presence. The boy in the hospital may not have been awake, but he was not unreachable. Because light speaks to the parts of us that even our minds forget. It speaks to the soul, to the core, to the place within us that still longs to be seen, to be loved, to be found. And on that day, in that sterile hospital room, in the middle of beeping monitors and hushed voices and clinical silence, something unexplainable happened. The boy's body remembered something. His soul stirred. His heart recognized that he was not alone in the dark, because the light had found a way in, wrapped in fur, clutching a sock, wagging a tail gently, breathing rhythmically beside him. A living symbol of everything he'd been missing, everything he was fighting to come back to, everything worth holding on for. This is the truth we often forget. The light doesn't always come in loud and obvious ways. It comes in love that refuses to quit. It comes in with a friend who keeps texting when you go silent, the mother who sits outside your door without saying a word, the dog who curls up beside you on your worst day, the stranger who smiles when you've forgotten how, the nurse who adjusts your blanket without a word. Lee, the puppy who travels through shadows because you're on the other side. Darkness is powerful, but only when it convinces you that you're alone. Light doesn't have to overpower it. It just has to be there. And the moment it arrives, everything begins to shift, even if just by a little, even if just for a second, because hope doesn't need to roar. It only needs to whisper. It only needs to remind us, "I haven't given up on you." That is what that puppy did. He didn't bring a solution. He brought a symbol, a reminder, a promise that the boy was still loved, still missed, still remembered. And maybe that was all the boy needed to start fighting again. Not for the machines, not for the treatments, but for him, for the little being who hadn't forgotten, who had carried the light all the way into the shadows just to sit beside him. This is the kind of love that doesn't care about logic, that doesn't check credentials, that doesn't stop at locked doors. It moves through the dark. It steps into silence. It carries the light inside of it, quietly, powerfully, unshakably. And when the timing is right, it becomes the moment the dark begins to break. Because that's what light does. It finds its own way in. So what do we learn from a small German shepherd puppy, a sock, and a hospital bed? We learn that love doesn't need a voice to speak. It doesn't need a map to find its way. It doesn't need permission to act. It simply knows. We learn that the most heroic acts are often silent, that the smallest gestures, waiting, showing up, holding on, can move mountains in the human heart. We learn that light doesn't always burst through the clouds. Sometimes it slips in gently through the cracks, on four paws, with tired eyes and a sock in its mouth. And in that light, healing begins. In a world obsessed with noise, let us not overlook the quiet ones. The ones who don't make speeches, but sit beside us. The ones who don't have answers, but stay anyway. The ones who can't save the world, but save our world, just by showing up. Because sometimes, that's all we need. Not a miracle, not a masterpiece. Just a moment. Just a reminder. Just one being brave enough to say, you are not alone. And if a little puppy, led only by instinct and love, can do that, then maybe so can we. So today, be the light, carry the sock, follow your heart, and never underestimate the power of showing up. Because sometimes, that's how lives are saved. That's how souls are restored. That's how darkness breaks. One act of love at a time, one quiet miracle at a time, one heart that refuses to give up. Thank you.